So my name is Zach with Realize the Market, and you're tuned in to the Think Realize the Market podcast. Our goal is to connect with entrepreneurs by providing a platform to help others through their experiences. Today, we're coming to you live from the Dallas Small Business Expo with a very special guest, Mzee Dillon.
Yes, sir.
With Dillon Morgan Consulting. How's it going?
Doing fantastic. I'm glad to be here, Zach.
Yeah, happy to see you here as well. So why don't you tell us a little bit about who you are and what it is that you do?
Yeah, so Zach, thank you. And I'm super excited about this opportunity. Never been on a podcast before.
Wow.
So I hope I'm a natural today.
Yeah.
So I run a consulting practice called Dillon Morgan Consulting.
Okay.
The idea is to drive process transformation. So if you think about every business, they want to sell, they want to make money, right? But what's the biggest challenge? Small business owners, they can deliver, but haven't really thought through how to drive efficiencies through that process. So more than likely, I've seen a client bring in $500,000 but walk away with $30,000 in profit.
Wow.
So you tell me what happened. Well, it goes back to the process. So we created something called the VirtualX. And the VirtualX is a service, and it partners side by side with that business. And first, we start by assessing the operations. What do we look at? People, process, tools, governance, customer experience. These are the 5 elements of successful operations anywhere.
Wow.
Now, if you can work through your process, people, and you can actually support it with good governance structures, metrics, you're killing it. Right. And so we've seen results time after time where we go into to support a business. They've set up, they're making money in revenue, but they're losing money. Money comes in the front door, out through the back, just never had the chance to get a business, their business operations fully established.
Yeah, so essentially you come in and would you technically help with the P&L process and like SOPs? Is that kind of what it boils down to, is kind of diving into both sections?
Pretty much. So the SOPs are kind of funny in a sense, right?
Yeah.
Meaning we're not even talking about such strict process. Here we're talking about process definition.
Right.
How do we actually go through defining the most efficient process? After you get through that, yes, you can document it and say this is kind of how we're going to proceed, right? And you can kind of make it your kind of formal SOP. But most of them are kind of just delivering, right? And what are we? Americans, we're doers. This is a culture of getting stuff done.
Yeah.
Yep.
But now, how do we get it done right?
Right.
Is the question.
Yeah.
So are there any specific type of businesses that you find maybe have the most shortfalls whenever it comes to their processes? Is there a particular industry you see that happening in more commonly than not?
I think the easiest businesses that are out there are service businesses. Super low investment. Anyone can start a service business. Anyone can, go to Walmart and pick up cleaning supplies and make a cleaning company. Go to Home Depot, buy a lawnmower, and make a landscaping company. And I'm thankful that we can do that. The challenge comes, and this is kind of the larger scale of businesses. There are a ton of businesses like this, right? Low investment, but high. They can hire really easy and grow these companies. So service business, I would say, is at the top of the companies or the industry that's losing the most.
Wow.
Right? Because they have to hire more people. Now, what happens with that leader, they get overwhelmed. They're managing pretty much everything.
Yeah.
They end up managing everything because processes were never fully established. Your operations, they more than likely never had the experience of setting up an operation structure.
I totally agree, and it really takes me back to something that I repeat often within our own business and our own practices, and it's something for myself personally that as a CEO and a founder and being able to provide for my team. One of the biggest things that I've looked at and keep repeating to myself is record yourself doing it once and you'll never have to do it again.
That's it.
Right? And so in that process, most people want to just do as you were saying, but don't go back and review and then record the process that worked the best.
That's it.
So in a scenario where we see that, would you recommend for people to do that in ways of, let's say, hiring like virtual assistants or, just any virtual help? Because in a fast-paced world that we're in right now, we have a lot of virtual help, right? There's a lot of out-based and consulting business, contracting businesses that'll come in and help your business without hiring full-time.
Right.
So would you think a process like this, recordings and SOPs and stuff, do you think that would help somebody in that scenario?
So my background is quite strange, you
Okay.
would say. So my background, I'm a certified Lean Six Sigma black belt, right?
Okay.
So our specialty would go through, you've seen it in manufacturing, you've seen it, because manufacturing, what are you looking at? You're looking at process, because
Yeah.
that much, of a deviation in the process will cost you millions, right? And so this is actually the focus of this particular company. And my consultants and the groups that we're hiring and the people that we're hiring have strengths in process improvement and process design. And so they're not your regular MBAs who have kind of, hey, I've studied business. That's great,
Right.
but can you optimize business?
Right.
And have you been around data to where you can actually build the story, find inefficiencies, and work through that, right? So we don't necessarily, yes, we're visionaries, but we're a bunch of doers. Bunch of doers who don't mind rolling their sleeves, and getting to the nitty gritty. I'll give you an example. I have a client now who has a diesel shop.
Okay.
They have a diesel shop. Never in a million years would a diesel shop think about getting to the nitty gritty on process.
Right.
But now we've gotten to that place, and guess what? They're soaring. They're getting stuff done. They're finishing work faster than ever before.
Gotta love it.
Right? And so, can you do it virtually? Yes. Would you require kind of meeting that client from time to time? Yes. But I do believe this is the new model of consulting, because it used to be you pay somebody a ton of money, like you're saying, and they would come in and fix some stuff. But now we're offering a VirtualX. What's a VirtualX? We give you a fraction of time. It could be an hour a week. But that hour a week, we've gone through built dashboards. We're working with you to build metrics on performance and kind of setting that governance and kind of holding that team accountable to deliver excellence through and through. So it takes time, but over time, it's almost like you hired a super expensive COO, right? For pennies on the dollar.
Yeah, love that. So would you, what is one thing that most business owners, everybody that's watching and listening, what's one problem area that you see often that just sticks out more? Is it the P&L? Is it the COGS? Like, what's the number one thing that just always sticks out every time? Like, every time you go into a business, you're like, I'm gonna look right here because I know there's something probably gonna be wrong.
I think it's simpler. 90% of the time, I would say, you find a small business owner, they're self-employed.
Yeah.
And they're self-employed, don't want to admit it. They look at their financials and they get excited. Look, I made $1 million.
Yeah.
But you didn't even pay yourself last year, right? And so this is so common that you find business owners and technically are not business owners, are self-employed, and they can't work themselves out of that business because what? They haven't set up processes so that they can actually take a step back and that company can run. And so they become the bottleneck of their own company. So most business owners are the bottleneck of their own success.
And in that scenario too, you know, if you're a one-man show and you book yourself to where you have no time in the day, you don't have time to build those processes anymore. So now you have to bite the bullet and scale back.
That's right.
And you have to let go of business. So you now have time to be able to build the processes for you.
Spot on.
And we've had to do that ourselves. That's the only reason why I speak to that and can attest, is because that's something that we've had to do. We've had to pull back, readjust, and then scale. And that readjustment to that scale was 3-4x further than what we were whenever we pulled back.
Spot on.
Yeah.
I've seen it. I've seen it so many times. You call up a small business owner, anyone listening to this right now, ask them, hey, when's the last time you told somebody, hey, sorry, I can't take that job? Right? And so many people are like, hey, sorry, I can't take that job. Sorry, I can't take that job. And why? They just don't have the bandwidth. They don't have the people to deliver it. They're overwhelmed. They're overbooked. That should tell you something.
Yeah,
Yep.
and you can get burnt out so quickly when you try to wear every hat of the business. And once you start delegating and opening your time up is when you start to realize how controlled by the business you really were, I think. So what are your opinions on delegation?
Well, you actually hit on something that I was just thinking about. You're spot on. You've kind of heard and thought about this whole, we're in a huge wealth transfer kind of period, right?
Yep.
And so just this year alone, I was just thinking about this. I know 2 companies that have been around 20 years that are shutting down.
Wow.
Wow. That's
Shutting
a lot.
down.
Yeah.
Now, watch this. The owners of these companies were self-employed for the last 20 years. Now they're creeping up in age. They're getting to a place where they can't really afford running these companies, right? Never had the process, never could build the process nor delegate. You can't delegate. I mean, in order to delegate yourself without process, literally somebody's just going to follow you through and you can say, hey, go do that.
Yeah.
Hey, that's great, but you're still passing inefficiency from person A to person B. That inefficiency costs you your profit margins. Now you're paying somebody else and you're losing money.
And you can't scale that way either.
That's right.
Because if you don't have any processes documented to help train new people coming into the business, because you're relying on them to follow and learn your every move, you can never push past that barrier of, okay, now I've got so much business, I need to hire as quickly as possible, but I just can't do that.
That's right. That's right. It's actually impossible to hire. I met a business owner a few weeks ago, and he was like, I can't seem to find the right people. I said, okay, well, let's talk about it. Let's see what's happening. And the more we discuss, the more you realize this is not an area that he's looked at in terms of people management, right? And the process to onboard, how do you actually get people to see a career in what you do? There could be a career in landscaping. You can have a career in housekeeping, right? You just have to see, how do you grow and how do you give people, how do you actually build that competence model where people can grow with that business?
Right. So in terms of a small business owner, do you recommend maybe doing some like health checkups on your processes every now and again? Like how do you keep your processes in a healthy position? And how do you audit them to ensure that they're staying as optimized as that they could be? You're
spot on. So I'm glad you asked that. So this is, you go take a look at this. You go to www.TheVirtualX.com. So the whole idea is after we onboard a client, we build a dashboard for them, for their performance.
Wow.
And the way we look at this, we like to compare it to a stool. Right? And so if you think about a stool, we're all sitting on a stool right now. The bolts that hold our stool together is your governance model, right? I don't care how nice and strong looking your stool is, your chair is. You don't put those bolts on there any time that thing comes apart, right? And so what happens is once you build that governance model and you have metrics, now we look at process metrics, we benchmark. And now we're giving these clients, hey, for this process across the industry, it takes everyone 3 days. Well, it's been taking you 7, right? For everyone across the industry, it takes 3 hours. Well, it's taking you 8.
Wow.
Now we say, what does everyone in the industry actually do? Right? If you're doing better than everyone in the industry, then that's great. We celebrate if you're delivering the same quality. But if you're not, then we have to go back to the drawing board and say, hey, we really need to look at this process so we can at least beat the industry, because you can't charge above market prices unless you're delivering something amazing.
Right. Yep. Either efficiency or output, either time efficiency or just brute force of results, right?
That's right.
So for time efficiency and results, I mean, those are the 2 best things. And if you can accomplish both of them, wow, now you're really winning.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
And that's the point where you would step into, marketing and sales. Most people just skip the process part and then just go directly into marketing. And we see it time and time again, being a marketing agency, where businesses will come to us and they say, hey, we're ready. And we're like, hold on now, let's slow down. Let's really take a look at this, because yes, we're in a business of making money, but we're not in the business of taking money, right? And so we want to make sure that people are being helped in the best way possible
Nice.
before we can just move forward with them. So I love the fact that you're diving into that, because we see it time and time again.
Yeah.
Right, over and over, where businesses think that they're at a position of scale when in reality they don't even have a foundation to stand on.
And
That's right.
And that forces us to take a look at processes as well. So I'm curious, what does success look like for your clients in terms of metrics and things like that? What do you define as success?
Well, it really depends on the industry, right? I'll give you an example. You got some industries, at the end of the day, they shoot for 30% margins, right? Meaning, based on their market price and the expenses they have to spend to deliver that work, they can only make about 30% margins. You go and drive more efficiencies, you may get 40, right? But you can't, again, you're not trying to knock out your clients by overcharging them either,
Yeah.
right? So you have to find new models and different things that you can do to deliver within reason, right? That's what I consider success. I believe if you can make profits, that's success. If you can scale, that's even better,
Absolutely.
right? If you can have 10 and 20 and 30 of that same company, now you franchise and you're going everywhere, that's pretty amazing. That's something we can deliver as well.
So if I felt like I was experiencing some bottlenecks right now in my processes, where would you recommend me taking a look at first?
I'll definitely say we have to measure, right? So I wouldn't throw you anywhere until we actually measured and saw, your process. And naturally, as you start measuring and mapping your process, and you put a different mind to it as you read it. Here's the biggest challenge we always have. We define the process, so we have to do it this way. It's that whole that's how we do it type of mindset.
Yeah.
and so we have to put on a different hat on so we can understand. Wait, does this still make sense to do this? Why do we do this? You have to ask yourself those type of questions if you really want to understand process.
I love that you said that, because that was a thought I had earlier. Is how do you handle somebody who might be executing a process in one particular way, thinking that this is the best way to do it, when in reality it might not be the best way? So how do you tell somebody that, hey, your process might be working now, but it can improve, and here's why I believe that?
Right. And I think it just goes back to data, right? Are they making money? Are they losing money from that process? Are they upsetting customers? Because customer experience is a huge thing, right? Now, if you're constantly losing clients and you're not focused on your experience management, this is a great incentive for business owners to open their eyes.
Right.
And you ask them, how many repeat customers do you actually have? And oh, by the way, this is a service that you can do again. Why didn't you get this call? Now somebody starts to say, oh snap, well, how about we do this? Why don't we run experience metrics, right? Why don't we reach out to that customer, send them a brief survey and say, okay, how do they believe this service went, and would they buy from you again? Now a net promoter score is pretty scary for people, right? And when they actually see that customer is not very pleased, it's an eye opener. And I think everyone should have a net promoter score.
Yeah, we were talking with one of our partners probably about a month ago, about a net promoter score, and how the company that he works with is always extremely high. And what are your recommendations for keeping a net promoter score high? Or how would a business even get started to figure out what their net promoter score is?
Right, so I wanna take a step back, because I've seen net promoter scores be a bit tricky, right? Depending on when you measured it along the process. I'll give you an example. I had a person I was speaking with that was in the medical industry.
Okay.
They took a survey immediately after the person left the hospital. Get it? Always a high score. They found relief. You were sick, you were hurting.
Yeah.
They left the hospital. Oh, that was amazing.
Yeah.
Thank you. You
5
guys
stars.
did amazing, right?
Yeah.
Unless you really did bad. I mean,
right.
It's pretty hard to mess that one up, right? And it was kind of an urgent care type of facility. They didn't have the beds and all of that, right? Because once you have the beds and different types of setup, I get it. People have different expectations, and expectations kind of drive that experience as well. But if you're kind of an urgent care, just going in, giving someone relief, and they're coming out, it's like, oh, it was great. But here's where it fell apart. They scored. It was great. People went home. They ordered their medication. Then they had problems. Then they took the score again. Guess what that was like? Well, every time I try to call you, no one answered. No one can help me when you get it? So in reality, their process wasn't really great. It was that the experience the client had of a relief. I mean, that kind of swept it under the rug.
How often do you notice, is that a common thing that you notice across businesses where they might kind of live in almost this delusion that their processes are on point and their customer experience is great, when in reality, it might just be for a small period of time because they were able to solve the problem quickly.
Right.
But, later on down the line, if that service just isn't lining up,
It could be. I think the biggest thing is you have to keep measuring. You have to keep honest conversations. I think one of the biggest challenges I've seen, I wrote a brief article around this, is your business, yes, your business is a brand, right? But it's not necessarily you. You get to work for that company.
Yeah.
And so what happens with many small business owners is there is a personal thing that happens there, and you got to be able to take your emotions out of it for a second and take a look and say, wait, is this customer really satisfied? Because if you're self-employed and you're the one delivering it, what naturally happens is you take the side of the person delivering. Well, you're not happy. Well, that's because, get it? Go look at some Google reviews. When you see a customer go up and complain, watch the business's response. Many small business owners will be like, well, that's because you did this and you did that and you did that. And you're like, wait, what happened? Well, they couldn't pull themselves out. So you have to be willing to pull yourself out and look again at your business performance and say, well, did we do the best that we could do as a business? Did we serve this business right?
I think too that comes along with understanding that you might not know everything, so asking questions is one surefire way to know that if your ideas are effective or not. And if people aren't asking the right questions at the right times, they might never get those answers.
That's right. You're spot on. They have to be willing to be vulnerable. And vulnerability in business is quite scary.
Absolutely.
Yes, sir.
So at what point would somebody be ready to hire somebody like you for your consulting services?
That's a great question. I've had from a person that was just getting started and they wanted to know, how do I build a process to actually have something that would stand? And I've had someone that was going really, really well, and they're like, hey, I need to prepare to scale and start some franchises in other branches. So I've had the scale from maybe, I would say, 50,000, 200,000, $500,000 plus, right? Of course, we have different prices too, because we realize that a person's just getting started is super nervous about hiring a management consultant, right? Oh, this is scary. No, actually, we go as low as $500 a month. We have a very personalized. I mean, again, we still build the dashboards for them, but we just give them less time. We can only engage with them so many hours in a month. But on the other side, you're running and you're seeing more revenue, and you say, okay, actually, I need more of your time. Then we actually have it goes higher. We have different packages.
Understood.
That makes sense. So I guess so let's flip the coin. So on your side, so what is the best way that you have found to retain your customers? What's the retention and the advocacy that you add in? What's your sauce that you like to throw in on the back end? Because you're having other companies do this. What is something that you guys do within your own business to keep, because you said on a monthly basis, right? $500, starting, and then month 2, month 3, month 4, a year, 3 years, 5 years. What is that minimum time frame or the maximum time frame a business stays with you? And if they stay long, how do you do that? How do you keep them around?
I will say this, I haven't what I normally see is as the company comes in and they're focused on growth, they're super excited about like, hey, I want you to be my COO. And I'm like, wait, we're going to grow and we're going to hire people for those roles at your company.
Right.
And we take a different perspective. You see, as the company grows, they don't necessarily need us as a VirtualX, but they may need us to do process training. They may need us to come back and do leadership development. They may need us to, okay, let's do a strategy session where we focus on knocking something particular down. Dillon Morgan Consulting is a wider company, but the VirtualX is very, very specific to the small business owner. Why? Because the small business owner doesn't have this type of support today, right? But I mean, again, we've supported larger companies, and we've supported, kind of growing companies that are getting started at the same time.
Yeah, I love that. And the cool part about it is working with new companies is they don't have much time to mess up, right? They didn't have a lot of time to build it all wrong, right? And then you got to say, hey, okay, let's forget everything you did know and not think about that anymore, and let's think about this new stuff, right? Catching them at that early age, it's almost like they don't have to renovate, right? They don't have to tear down their walls and rebuild everything up. And so in that structure, it really puts them ahead of the curve, right? Because instead of being like, oh well, I'll wait, right? I'll wait, a year. Let's see if I can do it myself. Well, if you do it yourself, you're building your house yourself. You build it wrong. Now we got to tear down your house. So that's going to cost more money. That's going to cost more time. Right? So you would recommend that a business as soon as possible get started with improving their processes, even if they're just, on day one.
Absolutely. One of the biggest challenges people have, you still have to do it, change management, right? There's the back end of making any change is taking people through that journey.
Right.
The smaller the company, the better chances you are walking them through that. The more people you have, you're having a ton of personalities. You have a ton of, you also have fear. People are sitting going, what's going to happen? What's going to happen to my job? What's going to happen next? And so I would say as they're getting started and the smaller they are, it does become, it's a lot easier for the colleagues and the people in that company to understand, okay, we're making this change because, and you walk them through it. This is why we're making this change. This is the value it's going to give our company. Now here you have a company of 100 people. It's a lot harder. You get to a company that has 1,000 people, 10,000 people. Change becomes, you have to run a whole project just on change management alone. Forget the actual change you were doing, but to take people through the cycle of change.
Which I was curious how you handle communication with so many people when it comes to changing processes like that.
Absolutely. You have to, communication is key. Change management is key. Again, at any given point in time, there's so many things there. You have trust. Right, and so I've been one day I may write a book on this, right, on what happens in change. So you look at ADKAR as the ADKAR model for change management. It's in the whole idea, right? It's kind of raising the awareness, building the desire, giving the knowledge, the ability, and then reinforcing that. So you're taking people through a cycle of change, right? That's great. There are other things that people do at the same time. And through that, you're communicating the entire time. But the nuance behind it is change management becomes harder when people don't trust their leadership. And so when the smaller the group is, there's a great chance that there's a closer relationship. If it's, there's a great chance you have a closer relationship. The larger it is, there's a great chance that the relationships are not as close unless that leader really worked on kind of building a small company mindset, meaning a family type of mindset. Now you get some of those family type businesses or people who work together that way, you may also have success in that, but it just depends on the company culture, right? Change management, company culture, they go together, and culture always wins. If you have a bad culture, it's harder to do stuff.
You're incredibly well versed in areas of communication and process management and all of this. How did you get to where you are today in this area?
All right, so I kind of got dropped right into the most amazing journey of my life. So I would say I came out of college 11 years ago, got hired by a huge telco company, $25 billion organization it had probably 140,000 employees. And I got dropped into a management process and improvement management type of role. And that's not what I went to school for. I studied computer engineering, but when I got there, it was like, hey, we need this. And I started as an analyst, and then I started building decks to show performance. But then when I got to these boards to present our performance, it was, why is that? Why you? And I was like, oh snap, I'm not ready. So I started bothering a lady that would to coach me, and she was a Lean Six Sigma black belt. She founded a black belt at this the black belt practice, kind of the competence at this organization. And so she led it, and I begged her to coach me, and she coached me. And eventually I went through the Lean Six Sigma yellow belt, Lean Six Sigma black belt training, went through a certification program. I took a PMP, a project management professional training and certification. I took kind of a change management professionals training and certification. And all these they've equipped me to be able to execute at a wider space, right? And so through this organization, I got to work in literally every function, from people to procurement to you name it, right? And so that gave me a lot of background. So when it came time to branch out and do this on my own, it really gave me a lot of support. It really gave me a lot of things I can look back to and say, hey, I'm thankful for that role there.
That's awesome, man. That's so cool. It's always good to see that backbone of where we all come from, right? People want to know our story, right?
Yes.
They do well. They do well. So we we are wrapping it up here. So as we move on, and all of the viewers and listeners, what is the best way that they can contact you? Is it by phone? Is it by email? URL? What's the best way? Drop it in.
Nah, thank you. All right, here we go. No. So you can check out DillonMorgan.com. This is the consulting firm.
Okay.
www.DillonMorgan.com. DillonMorgan.com.
Okay.
Now, the VirtualX for the small business owner is simply that. www.TheVirtualX.com.
Okay.
And when you go to the VirtualX, the first thing you're going to get is an assessment. The first thing you're going to get is an assessment. You go in and you're assessing your operations against people, process, tools, governance, and customer experience. It's going to give you about a 20-page report of each of these areas and kind of the gaps that we were able to figure out just from that assessment. What that's going to do, after that, we're going to give you a free 30-minute consultation. You just got to go over your report and the gaps that you have and see how we can help you work through that. The assessment's $100. It's on there, but it's definitely worth it because it saves you a ton of money and time. If you don't want to work with us, it gives you a report on what to do, meaning you know the recommendations and areas that you can go work on. It's great for a small business owner for sure.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for your time.
Guys,
I think we had a
thank you
very
so
great
much.
conversation. Yeah,
Yes, sir.
You're incredibly professional. Mzee Dillon with Dillon Morgan Consulting.
Yes.
Go check him out at TheVirtualX.com. And I hope you have a great rest of your day and make some incredible connections.
Thanks, guys. This was amazing. Thank you.
Of
Until
course.
next time, thinkers. Thank you all.